Well, good evening. One and all, thank you for joining us this evening for TI Technologies webinar hosted by Texas Instruments Australia. We are really excited to bring you introductory activities for TI-Nspire technology with Brian Lannon and Jim Lowe. And for some reason all of a sudden, good evening, Jim. Good evening, Brian. How are we doing?
Good evening, all.
Thanks for joining us, and I'm sure that we're all feeling a little bit, it's getting close to the end of term 4. Well, for some it's not, if they're watching it on demand, but we're very excited this evening, aren't we, gentlemen?
I'm excited.
Always when we do these things, John.
Fantastic. Okay, as you can see, my name is John Bayman. I am your host for this event. I teach mathematics to years 7 to 12 students at O'Loughlin Catholic College in Darwin, where I use TI technology to help students make stronger connections in their understanding of mathematics. And we were saying this evening how it's a bit of a challenge. We got Jim in Queensland, Brian in Yakananda in Victoria, and myself up here in Darwin. So we've done well to get here this evening, haven't we? So Brian, good evening.
Good evening. Yes, I think you've done very well balancing 3 different time zones.
Let's hope so, anyway. So as you can see, Brian is a very experienced teacher of mathematics and physics in a range of educational establishments. He is also an equally talented national TI trainer, and I always learn something from Brian. So when he runs workshops or webinars, so I'm looking forward to what I can learn from Brian tonight. So thank you, Brian, for joining us.
Terrific. My pleasure.
And our second panelist this evening is Jim Lowe. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening again, everybody, and John, thank you for the chance to participate tonight.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, so as you can see, Jim is a very experienced and knowledgeable maths educator. He is always willing to support fellow teachers and students, either in the classroom, through the Queensland Association of Mathematics Teachers, at conferences. Jim, are you going to MAV this year?
I am going to MAV this year, but of course the big news is that a couple of years down the track, the AAMT conference will be in Brisbane, so we're hoping to see lots of people here for that one in July 2019. How's that for forward planning?
Yeah, and I've already got in my calendar and a nice little plug as well at the same time. Well done.
Okay, so you can see my machine now, and I'm launching into the PowerPoint. The brief that you've read as you enrolled in this webinar, the brief that we were given discussing reports, exams and transition classes, my take on that was, well, actually I quite like transition classes. I think it's a very good way to round out this academic year and get a head start into next academic year without the pressure of, hey, everything's going to be assessed. We don't have to have exams and reports on it. But the 2 key questions that I consider is, how do you run the transition program in your school, or the step-up program as it's sometimes called? I'll be sharing my story and Jim sharing his. The other part of the topic is introductory activities for the TI-Nspire technology. So the other key question is, at what stage do you introduce that? I do tend to think that this time of year can be a good time to be doing it, particularly if students are advancing from one year to the other and they're moving into, they get a new book list, the excitement of new textbooks, the new material, and that flash new calculator that Mum and Dad bought for them. Don't you agree, Jim?
I certainly do, Brian. It's one of those things that I guess is very much an individual school decision, but I think the one thing we learn is that you can't leave it till it's mandated in the likes of year 11 and 12 to introduce the kids to this technology that has to become second nature to them by the time they get to that level.
Yeah, having said that, I know at the school I've been teaching at, we book listed from year 10, but there's a lot of activities that really belong further down the curriculum, you know, Year 7 onwards, and we will be displaying some of those this evening. There's some great introductory activities further down the curriculum.
What I was hinting at there, Brian, is that, yeah, by 10 or 11, it's necessary, but usually schools find ways and means to give at least some exposure to kids in the earlier grades of high school.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'll tell my story, and then I will hear yours as well. But at my school, we've had a fairly solid step-up program, as we call it. It goes for 4 to 5 weeks, and that is after the exams. So particularly for senior classes, well, our Year 12 students are gone, but for the Year 11 going into Year 12, it's very valuable time to basically knock off the first topic. As much as possible, we transition the students to their new classes with the new teachers. We use the opportunity to have an overview of the course, and as I said, a good start into that first topic. Now, with those topics, I tend to think the worst thing we can do is make the first topic of the next year a review of last year's work. Boring. It's a time when students will have a go, that they embrace the new course and they want to see something different. So Year 8 transitioning into Year 9, these are the ones that I've chosen. Pythagoras' theorem. I think it's readily accessible, it's different, it's something they won't have seen before, and it's practical. Plenty of hands-on opportunities with that. And I've had them staking ropes out in the playground to make a right-angled triangle, the old 3, 4, 5 triangle, that sort of stuff. Transitioning into Year 10, compound interest is the topic I've started with. Of course, you will do different things at different schools. From Year 11s, with my methods class, stepping into Year 11, from Year 10 to Year 11. Methods being the calculus course, I think we have to rather than talk about let's review algebra, let's get into rates of change. That is at the heart of calculus. So I get some activities happening with that. When I've transitioned a class into the general course for Year 11, matrices. Matrices part of the general and further mathematics course, and well, as a module in further mathematics. I think a topic that is readily accessible and a great one to illustrate the power of the TI-Nspire calculators, which can just crunch large matrices and sets of numbers very readily. And I've found when I've started teaching with that topic, it's really inspired confidence in the students. For Year 11 transitioning into Year 12 methods, I've generally started with Pascal's triangle, binomial theorem, and linking that through to binomial probability. Of course, you will make your own choices. I'm just sharing what I've done with my classes. For transitioning into the Year 12 Specialist Maths course, I've started with complex numbers. Once again, something that the TI-Nspire calculator really can give students an edge and an understanding of, wow, I can really crunch these and convert between polar and Cartesian coordinates and the like fairly quickly. Sorry, before I move on, Jim, your comments on those topics.
Well, Brian, if I could just mention a few things. First of all, I really endorse your idea of starting on a new topic. It's something that I've tried to do also, and not just review. I think if you start on a new topic, it gives all students not quite a level playing field, but much closer to a level playing field. So it's a bit of a fresh start for all, and if they can grasp the new topic, especially with the technology to support them, then you know, there's nothing like success of breeding a little bit of enthusiasm for the study to come in the previous year. But if you start reviewing the stuff that they've just struggled with a few weeks before, yeah, it doesn't engender much enthusiasm. If I just talk briefly about my situation while you've got that slide there, I mean,
yep.
The situation in Queensland is a little bit different, and I've got to admit that it's 3 years now since I've been in the school, so the people out there might contradict me, but our Year 12s finish early, but I don't believe they finish as early as what you guys do down there in Victoria, and then our 10s and 11s follow on from that within a week or 2 weeks. So there's not much time to do anything with them, because once the 12s are gone, that's really Year 11s into exams, and then they're gone too. So any sort of transition is really for the 7s, 8s and 9s that remain through to the end of the school year. And that is an excellent chance to introduce the technology to them. And like you said, teachers can afford to take a few risks with the technology because it's not going to count for any particular, you know, assessment or anything like that. And so they can try new things. And I always found it very, very stimulating to see what teachers were prepared to try at that time of the year.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. The whole idea of learning alongside the students, the activities and worksheets, which we will show shortly. I think a lot of them, and people who've been to my webinars and sessions will have heard me say many times, I think a lot of them are written so with such step-by-step precision that you could possibly even print this off and give it to a relief teacher and say, hey, if you're taking my class, here's the activity. The students just follow the notes and will learn as they go. If you've got members of staff who aren't as au fait with the calculator systems, then this can be a good vehicle for them too, to sit down with that worksheet and work side by side with the students. The urgency of exams and reports is all gone.
I certainly find that the case, and I think we'll move on and show some examples shortly.
Yes. So my other consideration was, at what stage do you introduce your students to TI-Nspire technology? This time of year may be your answer to that question. In my situation, it wasn't really. I've been taking Year 9 for several years in a row, and I've been team teaching with another teacher where we opened the doors, put the classes together, and we had some special interest topics. So Year 9 students at my school did not have TI-Nspire. They had the TI-30s, TI-30 Multiview. So what I did is I borrowed a class kit from Texas Instruments in Melbourne, and my school has the Navigator system. And so in the middle of the year, or about late term 2, early term 3, is when we've had a unit on, let's take a look at this new technology. So that was my answer there. The class kit coming from Melbourne was a bit of a bonus. I'll show you shortly how you can access that sort of thing. The other thing I did is, at school, when the calculators moved from the old click screen, or the click model, to the touch screen, some suppliers were selling the old models off cheaply, and so I bought a couple of class sets for the maths department. So they've been there as a useful resource. Navigator, of course, is very, very good for an introductory program, if you are fortunate enough to have that system in your school.
Brian, I'm sending through, sorry Brian, I was just sending through the link via the chat window for both the Loans program and more information about Navigator. So if people want to have those links, they're available in the chat window.
Oh, fantastic. That's very good. And this is what it will look like if you follow that link. To give your school a boost with the Navigator system. The volume purchase program is what my school used to get sets of the yellow hats or the Wi-Fi caps for those. And also from there, there's various sets of video tutorials for students to watch. There's heaps of activities for the Australian curriculum, worksheets, answers, and TI-Nspire files. Some of those activities are interactive tests. You can use that for assessment if you wish, or you can just allow students to test themselves. And some of these video tutorials were referenced by Daisy in the newsletter that she sent out just last week, and I'm expecting that most of you will have received that newsletter, and perhaps on the basis of that, subscribed to this webinar. Here we are. That's today's webinar being advertised, and next week's as well.
Tune in, same time. No, it's the same time, is it? It's a different day next week to get a similar presentation, but a different focus, not on introductory activities, but the more extended investigations.
That's correct. So you get the same two presenters, a similar topic, but that will be on the, is it the Tuesday evening, Jim?
Tuesday.
I'm thinking it is, yes. Okay, and in Daisy's newsletter, you see that she had links to those video tutorials. Once again, if you aren't receiving that newsletter, then make sure you subscribe. I think there's a link for you to subscribe at the end of this webinar, or also, of course, via the website. A lot of other tutorials are available on our YouTube site. And you know I'm a big fan of the Australian Curriculum Inspired and also Senior Inspirations part of the website. You see it year by year. Featured activities here. The number in algebra, the old frog jump. That's one that I've loaded onto my calculator and used with students. Again, I emphasise that I think the calculator is just one tool that's used here. It has the power of speeding up the simulations and doing lots of examples quickly, and can also record data and graph the data. But for that particular activity, I highly recommend students using counters and place markers to test the activity. Jim, you've got some ideas here as well, I believe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we go one step further, Brian, at the Uni Deadly Centre. We advocate getting the whole student body involved. So if I was doing that particular activity, I actually do it with some foam or rubber tiles on the floor to simulate the lily pads, and we line the kids up there and ask all the questions. Now, who can move, who can't move, who should move, and all that, so that by the time they move on to the calculator simulation, they have a full understanding of the nature of the problem, and they can just delve that little bit deeper into what's going on. Now I'm just talking and trying to click buttons at the same time. So that should be
I found as well that using it on the iPad, for some reason, just that touching of the screen a bit more and actually moving it in a bigger screen, using the TI-Nspire app on the iPad, kids love that as well. And yeah, like you said, you can either go Jim's way and leads into the technology, or start with the technology, and that normally leads into that practical approach and actually physically getting them. So I think it's a great activity. I'm glad you showed that on, Brian.
Yeah, so, as you said, with the iPad, the tactile nature of it, touching it.
That's right. All yours, Jim.
Okay, so you're seeing my screen, no problems now. So
wonderful.
I'll just share that slide and pick up where Brian left off. And I thought I would delve into one of the activities just for anybody out there that has not actually taken the step of downloading some of these activities, and just unpack one a little bit and show you what's in there and how supportive these materials are. So I went right to the beginning, if you like, and I went to a Year 7 activity, and this was actually, when I looked at it the other day, one of the featured activities, and so I thought I would grab this. So you follow the links as per the previous screen, you go to the activity, and you can see over here that you've got the option. You can download everything that's there in a zip file and unpack it yourself, or you can choose to download them separately, or one, there might be a particular one you're looking for, and you can do that. So that is what's available to you. There is the usually a student worksheet, a teacher's worksheet or teacher's notes, which usually contains suggested responses to some of the questions that are posed in there, sometimes a few extra tips about how to do something on the Inspire, and then, if necessary, the actual Inspire file. And I think that's what makes it really easy to use, because some of these files they're already constructed, so you're not starting with a blank slate, so to speak. You've got a document, a TI-Nspire document with the various pages constructed, and the student instructions take them through those so that they can follow the steps. And here's a quick example. So there's that hands-on reflection. There's the three things that were in the zip file. So we've got the student file over here with all the instructions and so on. And you can see in the teacher file the extra material in blue, which is little notes for the teacher to give them a nice background to the task, and so they make sure that they know what it is that is intended to be achieved there. I'm just going to have a quick look if I can find it. There it is. So there's the actual, let's make it a little bit bigger for you. So there's the actual student document, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things. So it's got the reference to the Australian curriculum, the equipment you need is listed there, and there's instructions for the student. And I just point out that things that are specific to the calculator are highlighted so that you can, as we said, students being introduced to the calculator first time, you can say, look, did you do exactly that? And if you didn't do that, okay, things went wrong, we just go back a step and start again. You notice that the activity is supplemented by screenshots, so students should get an idea of what it should look like on their calculator, even to the extent here where there is something that looks a little bit strange there, but the notes are in there to say, well, okay, now we've got to change something that's happening on that screen to make it look like the other side. So the students are learning about how to operate their calculator as well as some mathematics. And so in this particular case, if you haven't realised it already with a title like Hands-on Reflections, so they're actually using their own hand and a sheet of graph paper to come up with a set of coordinates, enter it into the Inspire, and then by manipulating the coordinates in the spreadsheet, actually produce a reflection of their hand. And the point I wanted to make in highlighting this activity is that being able to display points, either as a scatter plot like this or in some other format in the data and statistics page, but manipulating these lists and spreadsheets is a pretty much fundamental skill. And this activity shows kids, even at the early stages of high school, how to do that. yet we'll look at another activity in a few seconds which develops exactly the same skills on the calculator but at a slightly higher level of mathematics. And I think that's important, that if you want to get the kids enthusiastic, then you use the technology with an appropriate level of mathematics so that there is still some interest and challenge in the mathematics. We're not just doing what might be seen as a trivial activity to learn how to use the technology. We're doing meaningful use of the technology and learning some mathematics that is appropriate to the year level of students working in at the same time. I'll just swap back to the PowerPoint now and point out that although these activities are ready to use, you can, as Brian said, print them out and hand them to a relief teacher, and there should be no problems there because they've been trialled and tested and all of that before they go on the website. But it's still, we're all teachers and we all have our little favourite things we do at various times, so it's also possible to very easily tweak some of these activities and give them your own flavour, or at this time of the year you might think about just giving it a little bit of a seasonal flavour. So having the students use their own hand is very, very powerful and engaging because it is their own personal data. Nobody else should have a set of coordinates exactly the same as them. But you can quite easily do the same thing by letting them, you know, find a Christmas card or design their own Christmas tree and do the similar sort of thing. Do set of points if they're significant vertices for half the Christmas tree, and then exactly the same activity says reflect them and draw your whole Christmas tree. And I've had groups of kids get highly involved in that because what started out as a very simple Christmas tree, then they wanted to put a star on top, so they had to work out how they were going to put a star that was symmetric so that it could be reflected, and then how they wanted to put then some other decorations on the points, and so it became a very, very complex exercise from them, not from me. The activity just got them hooked and they took it from there. So that's one very simple activity. And looking at this one here called How Long, notice this one's targeted at year 9 and 10, and it's using things like the distance formula, and it's got a little bit of investigative flavour to it. But when you drill down into that activity, it is using the same sort of skills in terms of what the calculator requires, because eventually you're asking students to come up with a sort of average for what might be the length of a point, the length of a line segment generated at random, and so you use the list this time to generate random coordinates and plot them on the screen. So exactly the same skills, but at a different level of mathematics. And Brian and I were talking the other day and found that we both have dabbled in the past with similar sort of things, generating random points, but getting ourselves into Monte Carlo methods to estimate areas under curves and so on. So I think that's important, that you just have to search on that website and you will find an activity that is an appropriate level of challenge for your students, but has the guidance for novice users of the calculators built in there as well. I think at that point, Brian, I might pass back to you to continue with that.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Jim. And you know, it occurred to me as I was watching your screen there with that How Long activity that I think Peter Fox put together for us. But can you look at the colour scheme? Isn't it lovely? That yellow and black, I think, is just a beautiful colour scheme. Oh, and special greetings to our viewers from Adelaide this evening. And I will move along then, having made that observation. Here is what that how long activity looks like on your calculator. If you read the activities on the worksheet, I'll have a quick look at the worksheet. You can see I've got a few of them open at the moment. So this is the student activity worksheet, and the problem is presented. What is the average distance between 2 points randomly placed into a unit square, a 1 by 1 square? What is the shortest length of such a line? What is the longest possible length? And questions guiding the students through here. There are some samples here for them to measure with a ruler, and if this is printed out onto an A4 sheet, they're actually not 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre, but 4 by 4. So the instruction on the worksheet is for the students to measure the line and then divide by 4. The minimum length possible, well, would be 0 centimetres, but what's the longest possible length? If we've had a bit of a look at Pythagoras' theorem, we might be able to come to the conclusion that that would be the square root of 2. So we're going to get a line randomly generated that is somewhere between 0 and root 2 centimetres long. But what would we expect? What would the average of this be? So the problem being presented can then be investigated on the calculator, which is capable of randomly producing such line segments. And following the instructions on the worksheet, we're led to a discussion of how do we work out the distance between two such points, and each point having an x coordinate and a y coordinate. Let's just randomly produce one such coordinate. I do need to put equals rand there. The command rand quite conveniently produces random values within the range 0 to 1. In other words, will fit in our box. If I put that command there, I can copy it across here, and now I have a random x and y coordinate for the first point, and likewise for the second. At any stage on a spreadsheet, if I want to recalculate it, if I press Control and R, it recalculates. That is Control and R. The worksheet suggests that we copy that formula down. So we have, I think it suggested 50 random numbers. I'll just go to 45, that'll do for now. And so there's our random numbers. It suggested that in the next column, we write in for distance equals a distance, and we need to be careful here because I've labelled these columns y1, y2, x1, x2, etc. But they are also the names of cells in a spreadsheet. So the best way to use them in my formula is to go square root, we know our distance formula, shall I go x2 minus x1? If I simply type x2, it will create a confusion, but which I'll be asked about, but if I click the var key, standing for variables, you see the values x1, x2, y1, y2 are stored in this document as variables. So I can select from here, minus, you've got the idea, x1, and I close my bracket, and I square that, and we remember how Pythagoras' theorem works. I will then add to that y2 minus y1, close my bracket, square that, and away we go. So there are our distances between the 2 points, And the worksheet goes on to discuss a range of things, but suggests we should look for the mean of those. I can just over here ask this to write the mean, just in this cell here, of, and of course, distance itself, or the distance column, is a variable, and there we have 0.5 as being our mean. In the worksheets, how long answers, I think there is a suggestion that it should be between approximately 0.45 and 0.59 on average. Now, we've, as Jim suggested, taken a Monte Carlo type approach to this, where we've used the technology to generate lots of data to help us in our investigation. If you like to find the actual solution, good luck to you. I Googled it, and it's something like this. Now, as you heard Jim say, this activity was listed for Year 9. I don't think I'd be doing the integrals of the trigonometric functions with my Year 9 class. But you never know. It could be an extension for some of your better students. Also at the Year 9 level, distance between 2 points test. This is one that I did do with my Year 9 class, and these are very useful, especially if you have the Navigator system. If you don't, however, and even if you don't even have calculators, it is possible to, have I got that one? It is possible to just print out the tests. So here it is here. And again, you have the answers. So there's one for the teachers with the solutions and one for the students. So this is looking a bit like a textbook test, but I think it's a bit more interesting if you do it on the calculator. Calculator.
That's why you're getting almost there, Brian. I think that activity, the distance formula and so forth in that too long activity, is just a classic example of how we can use the technology to encourage kids to investigate. I mean, I don't think there is any student that would be prepared to sit down and work out the distance between two randomly generated points 45 times. I don't think as teachers we would even contemplate setting that for them, but with the technology, that's where it comes into its own in order to encourage that deeper investigation.
Yes, certainly the power of whether you're using other spreadsheets or the calculator spreadsheet, the power of being able to generate large amounts of data very quickly, that's the key there to that type of investigation. Other than that, of course, it can be used as something that helps stimulate student interest because it's their calculator, it's in their hand, it's a personal device. You just take them, look at them with their phones to see that argument. Here's a look at that frog puzzle. Once again, I absolutely agree with Jim's comments by using the pieces of foam and the mats for the frogs or the kangaroos or however you present this problem. But this is just another way of doing it. And once again, it's not very long at all before I mess this up. But there we go. That's that frog puzzle. Tower of Hanoi, and another one. And of course, it's not hard to find Java applets that'll do this sort of thing for you know, on your computer screen. That, of course, works on the idea that students have computers in their hands, which at some schools they do. But I think the calculator that they own, that they have, can be a more personal thing and that they're perhaps more readily going to use. Well, I got started that reasonably well. That's a bit of a fluke.
Well, you're getting carried away there. right?
You're giving blokes a bad name. You've been able to talk and coordinate what you're doing at the same time, you know.
I didn't go so well with the frogs, though, did I? This other one was a favourite of mine, growing interest. It's a favourite of mine because I wrote it, and it's one of the ones that is on the activities site there. And a key topic, and I've used this with my Year 9 students going into Year 10. They love the TVM Solver, time value of money solver wizard, which of course is based upon compound interest, but the activity that I have written here is comparing the situation where we're looking at two different investments, one which is a linear simple interest at 5% per annum, and the other compound interest at 4% per annum, which is better. Of course, the answer lies in the time frame. Here it is in a graph. And so in the short term, the simple interest is better, but in the long term, the compound interest. Again, step-by-step instructions through the worksheet with solutions, with the TNS file, with these solutions as well. Slides from my own step-up classes. Okay, I had a little graphic there, but it didn't carry over. But I think it's important to overview the course outline. I think it's important to overview how the course is going to be assessed. That's something key that students want to know, I think, at any level. But particularly, of course, for the senior classes, we need to specify and articulate these are the outcomes. This is what you will be assessed against. You know, both internally and externally. If you're using a textbook, I think it's useful to indicate how that relates to the set curriculum. I think that, well, certainly in Victoria, the VCAA website and past papers is a key site for all senior subjects. The study designs. So this is part of, you're now looking at part of a PowerPoint that I give to my students in transition weeks. And I link them to a whole range of things, as you see, various tutorials, work solutions, holiday lectures, of course the Texas Instruments Australia website, and even these webinars. The webinar that you are attending at the moment is targeted at teachers, but I think there's a lot of materials in the webinar archive that is quite suitable for students. In fact, on the website there is indeed a section for student resources that links them through to some webinar recordings and YouTube recordings. And I leave the students with a list of things that I expect them to get on with.
So you have time, Mr. Bryant, making them work in the holidays?
Look, they generally are keen to, I think, Jim, if they're given a good start and they know they're heading into a fairly serious year, and if you've hit them with a bit of enthusiasm, then a lot of them will have a bit of a go at it. Not all, but will have a bit of a go at it during the holidays. I must admit that I had the luxury of teaching at a reasonably a school with a reasonably conscientious student population too. So
I think the key thing, Brian, is if you don't give them anything, then they won't do anything. If you provide some links, as you've done, then at least they have the opportunity to pick up on them. Yes,
yep. And I think more than often they will and they do. We've just got to keep trying there. Here's a couple of others, and I think this is my last slide here, John. Again, this is from the general mathematics section on some getting started resources. There's shortcuts and the inspired crossword. I'm just going to show that because this will finish my website, my PowerPoint. But the this can be a beaut one that I don't know what it was doing at the senior level, because I think it could go in at any introductory level. This is a great one, and I'll tell you what, for just getting used to navigation on your calculator, this is the one that you give to the relief teacher or to yourself if you're not really feeling like preparing too much. Did I say that? Maybe I did. This is the no-brainer. You photocopy it, you give it to the students, and you say, there's a crossword, work with a partner. That's a great thing to do. And the deal is, go through the menus. Open up the calculator menu on and go to graphs, go to geometry, go to measurement. There's a range of words there. One across. The word I'm looking for has to be 5 letters long. What could it be? Well, let's have a bit of a look. What did we say? I'm opening up a geometry page. And menu, measurement. What are my options here? 5 letters. There are a few options. I will consider slope, and I will consider angle. Maybe I need some more clues. Let's go to another. What would one down be? It's a 3-letter word. From the calculator menu, in calculus. Let's go and have a look. So, calculator menu, calculus, 3 letters. I'm thinking sum, which would mean the other one would have to be slope. You've got the idea, and I'm sure that we've all done crosswords before. So, not that one, not that one. It is hiding there somewhere. It is there. So, we're on our way to filling in the crossword, and when you've done all that, you've got the answers. Slope.
Oh, you just cheated and told us it all, Brian.
We did advertise, John, that this webinar would provide the answers. It's up to the teachers how readily they, at what stage they provide those answers to the students. I would suggest perhaps not straight away, but for any of these, and I'll just quickly go to the website, for any of these activities, say Australian curriculum, we go to the year level. Let's take a look at Year 8. We select a topic area. I'm going to go, say, measurements and geometry, geometric reasoning, or using units of measurement. You can see some of these are tests. If there is a test, you see the green tick. You see the referencing to the Australian curriculum, and you click on the activity and download. It says download, print it out. It's as simple as that.
It really is. And I think the really nice thing is they're tried and tested. Like, they're all created by teachers who actually have used them in their classroom. Other teachers have given feedback, so you know that they're going to work. And I really like the idea that it takes the pressure away from the teacher. The kids don't actually look to the teacher for what to do. They actually are sort of much more self-motivated, because they sort of just go, well, I'm going to get on with it. And the teacher becomes the facilitator and the advisor. So kids are coming to the teacher rather than the other way around. I think it's really quite powerful.
Yes, and of course also to each other.
That's right, yeah, exactly.
Works quite nicely. Graphic design.
I think while you're on that site, Brian, it'd be good to show the from rather than the Australian curriculum, but just the senior curriculum that's continuing to grow, because that's also done by state, as I mentioned in the chat window. And the really advantage of that is obviously it shows both calculators using for both the Inspire and the TI-84, so there's activities for both available.
Yes. So Australian curriculum, senior curriculum, just zoom in a little bit there. So senior curriculum inspirations, and as John just said, it is state by state. Obviously I've been emphasising the Victorian curriculum, which the one that I'm more familiar with, but for John in the NT, and of course you're generally using not so much the TI-Nspire calculators there, John, but more the TI-84 plus CE. So activities written for that platform as well, which is also
and as you can see with all the SACE courses down the left-hand side, so you can actually get it filtered by the actual Year 11 and 12 SACE course that they follow.
Yes. So general mathematics here.
And that's slowly growing. Like at the moment, you can see there's not as many as we hoped. But being a new course this year, those will grow, and it's nice for teachers to revisit. So there really is plenty of resources, and I think that's what's really powerful about TI is that it's there to support the teachers, to make their life easier. And like you said, you don't sometimes have to be the expert. I think that sometimes teachers sort of may stay away from introducing a new sort of topic or a new concept on the calculator because they're not experts themselves and they're a bit worried. They don't need to be, because the kids don't actually look to the teacher. They will work it out for themselves. And like I said, all the documentation supports that, and you quickly learn from the kids. So you don't have to be. So it is great.
Yes, and as we say to students, the other section here, student resources, and prepare for exams or getting started. In the getting started section, there's those tutorials and guidebooks that I indicated before.
Your internet's slowing down a bit there, Brian. I'm worried that you've stopped paying the bill.
I am seeing that myself. I've got two computers set up, and one of them is ghosting as an attendee, and I do see the delay, so that's not particularly good. Yes, another fine NBN product. Perhaps we shouldn't discuss that too much. But in the Prepare for Exams section, you see once again, state by state, direction to videos. The Western Australian project, I think, was a particularly powerful one, where we ran a series of webinars specifically directed to students, and we ran that live to students. That was done last year. And this year, you see where it says new and new. I'm waiting for that to catch up. Yes, it is. For further mathematics and mathematical methods, we have sets of videos that have been recorded by a range of expert T-cubed presenters. You see it here, topic by topic. They're also available on the YouTube channel, but perhaps easiest accessed on the website here, because we can flick through, select the topics, and also download in some cases some question files, some TNS files that are associated with the lecture.
Fantastic.
So plenty to explore and enjoy, John.
Too much. That's the problem. So good job we got a nice break coming up where we can enjoy the Christmas festivities, and then perhaps start thinking about next year, which is a bit of a daunting thought, isn't it?
I'll look at that Christmas festivities first, I think, John.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, you do that, and I think so will I, and everybody who's on listening tonight. So thank you very much. Another fantastic webinar by Brian and Jim, two very experienced teachers and also TI presenters as well, and users, which is fantastic. And if you do have any last-minute questions, please make sure you try and get those asked. I know Brian and Jim will endeavour to answer them, or they'll equally add them to future planning webinars, which we know is happening next Tuesday. Is that right, Brian?
Yes, indeed. So what we're doing next Tuesday is we're taking, particularly some of the, if you like the Monte Carlo investigation idea, we're building one of the investigations we're doing. We'll be taking that further to look at, can I work out the area under a curve? And before you think of integral calculus, I have another answer. So if that's the sort of thing that interests you, stay tuned, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
So, Brian, we just had a quick question while we're on to these, which was if students want to get the files but they don't have a navigator, how is the easiest way in your experience of sharing those files across to students?
Yep, very good question. Now, first of all, students can download, or anyone can download the TI-Link software, and that's available on the website for free. So it's a free download. So that way, students and/or teachers can browse the website, find the TNS files, and use TI-Link to do the file transfer. It's actually referenced from, I can see you're looking for it there, John. It's actually referenced from that student support centre that I just showed you for exam readiness. So TI Computer Link, you see it there. So that's the download there. So free software. And then it's just, once that's running and the calculator is connected, it's as simple as drag and drop the files. Once the file is on one calculator, then it can readily be shared from one calculator to another using the shorter mini USB to mini USB cable. And most students are fairly au fait with that process as they write files and swap them from one to another. Good question.
Yeah, that's right. And I quite like that sometimes as even a question, you know, oh, okay, we've got this file to share, how quickly can we share it out? That's always quite an interesting one as well. But also, as we know, teachers can access that teachers and students can access it from home, so teachers can easily email it out to students, and students can download it while they're at home, and equally they can send TNS files to either the students or the teachers via that email channel as well, which works quite well, or even Dropbox or something similar. Yes. The other question was about purchasing Navigator. You mentioned the volume purchasing program, which I think is awesome. It's like I'm into Woolies Rewards, and why would you not when you're going there to shop anyway? You're going to get it. You might as well get something as a bit of a bonus, and this works like that. TI are really supportive of getting more equipment out to teachers and to schools, and I think this is fantastic. They're more than willing to get you to show if your schools have purchased it through a company. They'll just look at the invoices of that. So I reckon that's a really good way to get the Navigator. Any other thoughts that you have, Brian, on ways to get it?
Yes, one of the suggestions there is to save the barcodes from the packaging. I thought that was a fair bit of work involved. When my school got Navigator, what we did is we sent to Texas Instruments Australia copies of the purchase orders and the invoices.
That's
because
right.
we purchased all the calculators through the school and then put them in student book packs. So that invoice was the evidence that TI Australia that satisfied them, and then we got not only the yellow hats but also the charging docks,
which are fantastic. That's right. I don't know if there's a picture of them here, but they're great, aren't they?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, they're not on this picture. Okay, so thank you for those questions. I will keep that open, and if there are any other questions as we finish up, I'll try to give you to answer them before we leave tonight. Or equally, you can email, and you'll see an email address in a minute. You can email TI Australia and ask them. More than willing to answer your questions. There will be, as you can see there, a brief survey, feedback form that will show up in your browser as we finish tonight. And please, can you fill that in? Because it does allow us to plan for future online events. We do listen to your feedback. The whole point of these webinars is to support teachers in the classroom. So if we're not achieving what you want us to do, then we can adjust that so that we do. And also, as we all know now, having a certificate of attendance is important for our PD hours. So that will be emailed to you in the next 48 hours. Along with a link, as Brian's mentioned already, to our on-demand and our YouTube version of the recording. So also with any relevant documents that Brian and Jim have shared this evening. If you do need any support, as I mentioned a minute ago, please give TI Australia a call. There's always somebody there who can have a chat to you, or email them, and they normally reply within a day, if not the same day. So please get in touch with them. Like I said, TI Australia really are here for you as teachers. I know that through my own experiences and my fellow teachers. So that brings us to the end of tonight's webinar. I really would like to thank Brian and Jim for an informative evening, for what they've shared with us. And I also would like to thank all you as participants for joining us this evening. We do it for you, so thank you for joining us and making it worthwhile. And that is it. Brian, thank you very much. Jim, thank you very much. I hope you all got something out of this evening, or if you're watching it on demand, I hope you find it very useful, and we will be back online soon. Good night all.
Good night to all. Cheers.